As you would expect, the compliments are flowing out of Athens, Georgia in advance of the matchup with Michigan. Bulldogs coach Kirby Smart speaking of the respect he has for the Wolverines and Jim Harbaugh calling them a senior-laden, senior-driven team. But what of Kirby's team, you ask? Well, let's check in with a guy who covers them every day, Seth Emerson of The Athletic. Seth, really appreciate you taking the time to join us. Let's start with this. Georgia was #1. They were seen as the most dominant team in college football, and then along comes their nemesis, Alabama, who absolutely obliterates them in the SEC championship game. So what is the mood now of Georgia fans as they head into the college football playoff?
Well, you know, it's funny, Dave. When they lose the way they did to their nemesis, there's just kind of this sense of, oh, well, you know, it happened again. But this is the first time that they've lost to Alabama, but the season's not over. Now, right. Technically before, you know, you had bowl games or whatever, but national championship, obviously season was over after second 26. 2018 SEC championship, and they went to the Sugar Bowl, but they missed the playoff. 2020 last year, regular season, they still had a chance, but there was just kind of a sense that that was it. They'd hit their ceiling. This time, season's not over, but a lot of people are acting like it. It kind of feels that way. It's like, here we go again. But I wonder if Georgia is able to beat Michigan, and obviously that's job number one, whether people are going to perk up and say, oh, okay, this time we get another shot at Alabama, or whether they're going to say, well, we'll believe it when we see it.
Let's break down the team a little bit. It's been really interesting to me to follow this quarterback situation from afar. I can only imagine what it's like up close and personal. But is it your sense that Stetson Bennett is going to be the starting quarterback against Michigan?
Yeah, I would guess that. I think that if they went back to JT Daniels, Kirby Smart would keep it as much of a secret as he possibly could, but it would eventually leak out. It's hard to keep a secret like that. My colleague at The Athletic, Jeff Schultz, tried yesterday to get something out of it. I think he asked it as well as he could, and Kirby kind of dodged it, but Kirby dodged it with a smirk, as in a kind of a knowing smile, saying, I know what you're asking, and I'm not going to give you anything. I think, yeah, they believe that Stetson Bennett gives them the best chance, considering what they thought early in the season was an offensive line that wouldn't pass protect as well. So his scrambling ability would be a blessing, to use Kirby Smart's word yesterday when describing Stetson Bennett's feet. And their receiver situation was such that they've been banged up since the beginning of the season, that they thought that they couldn't just put a typical pocket quarterback like JT Daniels back there and throw all over the place the way they envisioned doing in the spring before the injuries hit. Now we're sitting here at this point now where George Pickens has returned. Dominic Blaylock has returned. They're starting to get healthier with some other guys that have been playing, but not 100%. But at this point, they're not given any indicators that they are going back to JT Daniels.
Well, when you are facing Michigan, obviously having a mobile quarterback is a good thing, given this pass rush. It is clearly the biggest strength of the Wolverines with Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo. Let me ask you this. Georgia all year, they'd given up 8 sacks, I believe, all season before the Alabama game, and then they gave up 3 against the Tide. So give us a sense here of pass protection for the Dogs, particularly at those tackle spots.
Better as the season went on. I think they thought that the 8 sacks they gave up during the regular season would have been more if Stetson Bennett hadn't been able to bail them out of that. Now, JT Daniels is also pretty good at getting the ball out. My editor, Jason Sterrid's a whiz with stats, came up with some stats showing that he was among the leaders in the country in terms of getting the ball out on dropbacks. But they preferred Stetson Bennett using his feet, and that's where I think it kind of gets back a little bit more to the receiver situation than the offensive line situation. But the offensive line did, I still think it did okay against Alabama. The 3 sacks were, there were a little bit more situational. There was at least one where Stetson Bennett just didn't get rid of the ball as quickly as he could have. They have at tackle Jamari Sawyer, a guy who is going to play in the NFL. The question is whether he's a tackle or a guard. So I think that's the guy they likely want on Aiden Hutchinson, but obviously Michigan will dictate that. And the other right tackle, Warren McClendon's been pretty good too. But are these guys like first-team All-Americans right now? No. So I think they're going to, if they were smart, they probably are going to do some stuff to try and account for Hutchinson and the rest of the Michigan pass rush, such as quicker throws, but also trying to run the ball and trying to be balanced.
The story all year with Georgia, of course, has been the defense, Seth, and yet here we watched them against Alabama, and they just got picked apart. Now, part of it was against a quarterback who ended up winning the Heisman Trophy, largely on the strength of that performance, I guess. But how much of that do you believe was Georgia just having a bad day? Do you believe they were exposed to some degree? What happened there?
Somewhere in between, they were overrated and got exposed, and it was just a one-game anomaly. They'll be fine. That secondary has been a question since before the season started because they had so many guys turn pro, and the guy that they expect to be their top cornerback transferred to Miami. They went into the transfer portal and got Darian Kendrick from Clemson. They were starting a former five-star, are starting a former five-star at the other cornerback spot. They have veterans at safety. But they look, the name of the game in college football, and Georgia saw this last year when they had a first-round cornerback in Eric Stokes and the first overall pick of the second round in Tyson Campbell. They still got exposed in the passing game, mainly against Alabama, a little bit against Florida. That was more kind of wheel routes and stuff. But the name of the game in college football these days is if you have a really good passing game, a really good quarterback, and really fast receivers, you're going to beat really good secondaries if you can get those one-on-one matchups and if the quarterback has time to find those receivers. And the difference against Alabama versus the rest of the season was Bryce Young had time to find those receivers. And he also, had two really good receivers, plus some others. And so Georgia in that game got exposed. The secondary, long story short, too late, secondary was always going to be something that you wondered, are they really that good, or are they being protected by a really good pass rush and a really good front seven? And when the pass rush wasn't there against Alabama, that's when they got exposed. The trick for Georgia against Michigan, and if they see Alabama again, or even Cincinnati, is going to be figuring out a way to get that pressure back.
So I know kind of compounding this is the fact that defensive coordinator Dan Lanning is off to Oregon. Now, I understand he's staying with Georgia through the playoff, but he is still, you're trying to put together a staff at Oregon and you're worrying about recruiting and all these different things. To what extent, if any, do you believe this could be a distraction or kind of just an inhibiting factor in terms of getting the same level of preparation they would typically get?
Well, there are people who, and they're just fans, I haven't heard this from the inside, but would tell you that Lanning was distracted leading up to the SEC championship, which is why that happened, because he was mentioned for the Oklahoma job too. But Kirby Smart has been through this as the defensive coordinator at Alabama in 2015 when he got the Georgia job the day after the SEC championship, remained as Alabama defensive coordinator while trying to put together his staff and recruit for Georgia. So informed by that experience, he decided, I think in conjunction with Lanning, to say, you stay with us, you continue to coach the outside linebackers, you continue to be a big voice in the room as we decide our strategy, but the coordinator title is going to go away from him, and it's going to be split among Will Muschamp, who obviously has plenty of experience as a defensive coordinator, and Glenn Schumann, who was already the co-coordinator in title, maybe takes a few more responsibilities. Lewis Seen, junior safety, described it to us yesterday as they always felt they had four coordinators between Kirby, Muschamp, Schumann, and Lanning, and they still do. So Kirby is trying to do this with as little disruption to their defensive process as possible.
Seth, what do you ultimately think decides this game?
The other side of the ball that we don't talk about, I think Michigan's offense against Georgia's defense gets talked about a lot because of it. What we were talking about, does Georgia's defense get exposed or not? Michigan's offense reminds me a lot of Georgia's 2017 offense, where you've got a quarterback who's efficient and doesn't make many mistakes, but their main strength is their run game. I'm not sure Michigan can run on Georgia. So I kind of envision Michigan, if Michigan's able to score a lot of points, then maybe game over. But I flip it to the other side with what we talk about with Stetson Bennett and Georgia's run game, which has been kind of, all season, versus Michigan's defense. If Georgia is able to get anything on Michigan's defense, we may find out about Michigan's defense in this game the way that we found out about Georgia's defense, or we think we found out about Georgia's defense against Alabama. I'm not saying Michigan's defense is going to be exposed. I think that how good Michigan's defense truly is and whether Georgia's offense is able to get anything going in this game, I think that's what I would watch the most.
Last thing I want to leave you with, how much pressure is on Kirby Smart here?
I think there's a lot. I mean, a lot in terms of the offseason, the narrative, how many times he hears everything. I mean, they signed another top 3 recruiting class yesterday. I mean, it's incomplete. We're not done yet. And the transfer portal recruiting is going to be something, until next season starts. But there is a sense now of, even among the fan base, of, okay, Kirby, come on. And I think it centers on quarterback. If they were in this position with JT Daniels, the expected guy's quarterback the whole way, it'd be a little bit less so. But I can write anything, I can tweet anything that doesn't have anything to do with quarterback, and people come back at me with Stetson Bennett, et cetera, et cetera. If they're riding with Stetson Bennett, and if they win, he's vindicated. If they lose, whether or not Stetson Bennett's fault, you're going to hear about it, as evidenced by the reaction to the SEC championship, when Georgia's defense was mostly to blame for that. But Stetson Bennett is the one that fans just want to talk about.
There's something about the quarterback position, isn't there? Seth, Emerson, great stuff. Really appreciate your insights, and all the stuff on The Athletic is fabulous. I learned a lot from reading what you have written here over the last couple months. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Signing day in college football yesterday. Ohio State with the top Big Ten class, again, finishing 4th in the nation to this point anyway. Penn State and Michigan both hauling in top 10 classes nationally. And how about Indiana? Did not win a conference game, but still able to hold on to a top 20 class in the nation, 4th in the Big Ten. Allen Trieu was here all day yesterday, and as if he has not done enough, he joins us now to put a bow on everything that he talked about for 3 hours with Mike Hall and Jerry DiNardo and Howard Griffith. Allen, let's start with this. For those who weren't in the weeds with you guys in recruiting yesterday, and shame on them for not watching the entire thing, what were the biggest headlines, biggest takeaways in the Big Ten?
Well, first, I'm sure it'll rerun quite a bit, so feel free to catch that. But I also think that, when you talk about the storylines, you expect Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State to be up at the top of the conference. But I think when you look at that left side, the number of teams over there that maybe haven't been over there before, Iowa with a good class, Rutgers with a good class. You just talked about Indiana, Michigan State only in the second year under Mel Tucker. I think that's a good thing for the conference, that their schools are catching up. There's not such a wide gap between 1 and 14 anymore. And you have some new blood in there in the top 30 to 40 of the national recruiting rankings.
Let's get into Ohio State a little bit. We have seen freshmen make impacts there. This year, we've seen freshmen make impacts, including Travion Henderson, of course, has had a really good year. Who are the freshmen who might be most ready to contribute for the Buckeyes this coming season?
Yeah, I think when you talk about freshman contributions, there has to be availability and then talent on the player side. And I think it lines up pretty well for a guy like C.J. Hicks, who's a 5-star linebacker, has the kind of speed and skill set to be able to be plugged in multiple spots. So where there's a need, I think he can play there. Would look out for Sonny Styles, too. He was a 5-star in the 2023 class. He reclassified into this class, and some people may be skeptical about whether a guy who should be a high school senior can go out there and compete at the Big Ten level. We just had that happen with Braylon Allen. So I think C.J. Hicks and Sonny Styles have the physical capabilities to come in and help the Buckeyes.
For Penn State, the headliner is obviously the 5-star quarterback, Drew Aller, considered by some to be the best quarterback in the country. Give us a sense of his skill set. Is he a dual threat guy, drop back guy? Where does he fit in that continuum?
Well, I think, 10 years ago, he would have been considered a drop back guy, but now even those guys need to be mobile. And I think that's what impressed our staff so much in moving him up in the rankings, is that 6'5", 230 pounds. He can escape the rush. He can make throws from all different sorts of angles. Wasn't actually a guy who grew up playing quarterback, played other positions. So he brings that athleticism. And because he picked it up late, he's improved each and every year. Outstanding intangibles as well. He's every bit of a 5-star prospect.
It seems like Michigan had a big day yesterday just in terms of getting commitments and signees on the final day. And in seeing kind of how it evolved, it feels like a lot of this was based on the uncertainty and turmoil at other places, whether it was head coaches leaving or coordinators leaving, and the stability at Michigan really worked to their advantage, Allen.
Yeah, perfect storm for them of, like you said, some coaching changes elsewhere, and also them ending the season strong the way they did allow them to flip some of those players who were uncertain. And those kids only have, if you have a coaching change now, you only have a couple weeks before the early signing period. Michigan did a good job of staying in contact with them. A handful of them were able to make quick visits in December. The coaching staff really hit the trail hard after the Big Ten championship game to make up for lost time. And so it all came together in what resulted into a big first day of the early signing period for Michigan.
How surprised were you that Indiana didn't just hold on to its class, but actually added to it yesterday as well, given, again, did not win a game in the Big Ten this year?
Yeah, I can see how that would be surprising to some, but as we stayed in contact with their class throughout the fall and talked to the kids who were committed, they really believed in Tom Allen and his staff and their vision that this was only going to be a one-year deal. They've had so much success in the other seasons that he's been there. I think Tom Allen is seen as a very genuine, honest guy. Recruits want to play for him. I was not surprised that the class stayed intact. Some of the additions yesterday, maybe a little bit surprising, but I think they have full faith that the Hoosiers are going to get it back on track.
Another team that seemed to have a really good day yesterday was Iowa, making some big additions on signing day. All of them, it seemed like, on the defensive side, which of course speaks to the strength of this program. And they end up with the top class, at least for now, in the West. What stands out about the group that Iowa got?
Yeah, I think Kirk Ferentz said it yesterday that they were looking for help on the back end in the secondary, and they got it in a big way. I think what really stands out, you expect Iowa to find some 3-stars and turn those guys into NFL prospects. It's rare that they sign somebody as highly touted as Xavier Nwankpa. He's really the standout in this class. I think he has a chance to be an early impact guy, but don't sleep on the 2 additions from Michigan yesterday, Cohen Entringer and Orlando Trader. Those are Desmond King, Josh Jackson type right.
Hey, Alan, we seem to be having a little bit of trouble with your feed for whatever reason. So, there you might be back. You got us now, Alan? Now we're going to let you go.
Yeah, I got
Alan,
you.
sorry about that. Great stuff, as always. Allen Trieu from 24/7. Star power on display at the Orange Bowl. Michigan and Georgia both with 2 first-team All-Americans, according to the American Football Coaches Association. 4 players on that Bulldogs defense we were talking about with Seth Emerson earning either first or second-team honors, all of them in the front 7. So, again, a really formidable group. Angelique Chengelis, friend of the network, whether she likes it or not, covers Michigan for the Detroit News, and she joins us now. Angelique, let's start here. Give us a sense for the mood around Michigan right now. If you would have told Michigan fans at the beginning of the year, you're going to beat Ohio State, you're going to win the Big Ten, you're going to make the college football playoff, certainly they would have been delighted and said, where can I sign up for that? Is it enough right now for Michigan, or is there a sense of, hey, there are bigger and better things out there?
Well, I think there is now. That bar is set, and it's very high. I think you probably know about it as a Northwestern fan. When Northwestern went to the Rose Bowl, that invigorates a program, and the Michigan program needed to be invigorated, and certainly this season has done it, Dave. And I think Michigan fans now believe that getting to the next level, which is beating Georgia in the semifinal and getting to the national championship, is very possible. And they're buying up tickets. They sold out immediately their Orange Bowl allotment. And I haven't seen this fan base this excited in a long, long time.
How about the players? How do you guard against the players kind of being satisfied with getting there?
I think that's been the whole key to this season, Dave, is that they have really, since game 1, when Aiden Hutchinson said they hadn't done anything yet, even after they beat Western Michigan. And then that was the mantra each week, that they hadn't done anything yet. And they were very cautious going into that Maryland game before the Ohio State game, that, this was a playoff season now, and 1 win and they're out, and 1 loss and they're out. And, I think that they have really, really embraced that. And they've got the leadership from a Cade McNamara, from an Aiden Hutchinson, from a Josh Ross, from a Dax Hill. They're getting that leadership and that focus. And they really have been very unified in this approach. And it clearly has worked for them.
No doubt there's not nearly as much pressure on Michigan as there is on Georgia. The expectations were so high at the beginning of the year at Georgia. They've been high all year. To what extent, if any, do you think that can work to Michigan's advantage?
Well, I think that they have the blueprint now. And I'm not saying Michigan has the talent, the personnel that Alabama has in that win in the SEC championship game over Georgia, but I think that it gives a roadmap for Michigan, and they know that they're very balanced. They know that they're very talented. They know that it is going to be defense against defense here, and those are going to be, that's the matchup. And, how these two offenses fare against the respective defenses. And I think Michigan, with Josh Gaddis now fresh off of winning the Broyles Award, I think he's very confident in the game plan and what he has done this season and the pieces that they have in McNamara, in Hassan Haskins, in a more healthy Blake Corum, and now Donovan Edwards emerging, the freshman running back, and what he can do, and versatile, how versatile he is, and the receivers. And I think that they feel really good about their opportunity here. And I think Aiden Hutchinson is looking forward to his opportunity too in his last game as a Michigan player, perhaps David Ojabo's last game too. And they're looking at Stetson Bennett and know that if he gets pressured, he definitely struggles for Georgia in that offense. So I think there are a lot of reasons that Michigan feels good about this matchup.
One of the huge topics of conversation surrounding Michigan this year has been from the very beginning that something seemed different about Jim Harbaugh. And I think it's played out. Just the brief amount of time we were able to spend around him in Indianapolis, he seemed very different when he came to our set and spoke with Jerry and Howard and me. What is that about, in your opinion? I think it's almost irrefutable at this point that something is different. I think we're past the point of asking, is something different? And I think now we have to ask, why is it different?
Dave, I think from January, after he signed the extension, it was half of his previous salary. A pay cut, all right, $4 million pay cut with incentives now. And he put up that list of goals he had when he was speaking to the Michigan high school coaches in January. And one of the last one was he's going to coach without fear of losing his job, without fear. And I think that's the approach he's taken. And then he hired this younger staff. And I think that has totally invigorated him as well. We talked about the program being invigorated. I think that certainly helped. He got in shape. He said he was at his NFL playing weight. He looked better. He looked healthier, and he looked happier. And I think that has also played out week after week. He was looser in news conferences, which I can't say has always been the case. and you saw it in July at Big Ten Media Days, how much looser he was. And I do think he has said frequently that he loves this team, that he feeds off of this team. And I think that that's been a very big part of the recipe for Jim Harbaugh kind of regaining it, because he had that it factor when they hired him from the 49ers, and it's back.
It's interesting when you kind of lean on recent history, and of course the recent history against Ohio State was so bad, and we talked about it ad nauseum, and of course they ended up going out and pounding the Buckeyes. That being said, the recent history in bowl games is not particularly good. They have lost 4 in a row here. To what extent has that come up in terms of re-examining their process, perhaps a little bit about what they do heading into the postseason?
It really has not been a topic of conversation among players. I think anytime you bring up even 2020, they all say, hey, that was last year. It doesn't matter anymore. And I think that's the approach is those are previous Jim Harbaugh seasons. Maybe he looks at it differently, but I think he's even sort of closed the book on those previous bowl games. And it's really just looking ahead with this group and where this team, which seems to be laying this foundation and getting this program back on track. And that's been key in his 7th season as head coach. And I think that they just want to look ahead, Dave. I think that they're not even going to look back at what they did in those bowl games.
What's the biggest thing in your mind that will determine whether or not Michigan wins this game?
I think it's how this offense fares against Georgia's defense, which is vaunted for a reason. And they have such impressive personnel. And And look, I know that Michigan goes against a very good defense every day in practice, and that has built the confidence of this offense. But this is a different beast in Georgia, and they've got a lot of really, really big pieces there in the middle. In particular, Jordan Davis is something else. So I think that's how this offense, if they can come out and quick strike like they did against Iowa in the Big Ten championship game, and certainly had some big plays in that Ohio State game, I think then they build that confidence. And that's how they can pull away and win that game.
We leave you with this, Angelique. Biggest takeaway from signing day yesterday. Michigan made some waves, no doubt. What did you learn about the future of the program?
Well, I think that they really did go defense heavy, and they really felt like they needed to rebuild the secondary, which is clearly a need, and get bigger on the defensive line, and particularly in the middle. And, they flipped a couple key players at the end, and I think that there was some juice there for Michigan winning that Ohio State game. And I know that usually helps going forward, the 23 and 24 classes. But I think they did pick up some players because of that momentum, late season momentum. And, these are not big name. I mean, it's not like you don't have a J.J. McCarthy, a Donovan Edwards in this class, but you have some really strong pieces. And I think what we've seen from this season is this has really been a team without a real standout. Obviously, Aiden Hutchinson, but, you don't have these like flashy players. And I think that's what this class also reflects.
A lot of excitement about the long-term future, a lot of excitement about the immediate future as well, which includes that trip down to the Orange Bowl. Angelique, hope to see you there. Thanks so much for joining us.
Look forward to it. Happy holidays.
Same to you.